Well, what do we have here? A Dallas prospect live stream, and we brought back Enyi Nduka. This is a ratings ploy. There's no other reason. No other reason that we would run this back. Enyi, how are you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing great. DDP, how have you been?
Been good. Been good. Been rather busy, and it has been. God, we were talking about this. I know we were talking about this right before we jumped on. I'm trying to remember the last time we did a live show together. Like I think the last show we did might have been when we were both on a roundtable for We Talk Mavs. Like a
Yeah,
prospect based one. I can't think of the last one that we did.
it's been a minute, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
Very much so.
It has been several
Several
minutes.
minutes, yeah. It was doom and gloom there for
Yep.
during that year. So I can only imagine how tough it was. Shout out to We Talk Mavs. Shout out to TGK, the unofficial Mavs pregame show. They were still cranking out content even through that just abysmal time period.
Yeah.
Where it was even hard for me to even
Yeah.
watch sports content on YouTube, let alone Mav stuff. So
Yeah, no, salute to them. They do great work. Unreal dedication there. I was basically wrestling with burnout, and it was miserable viewing experience. And I was just like, I just need some time away. And I didn't even know how long away that was going to be. But ended up being a minute, and then kind of credit to them as well for initially piquing my interest to even make the comeback when I did. So
yeah,
worked out very well.
you got some real ones on your corner, bro.
I appreciate that. That immensely. In fact, I bumped into someone today. I was out and about with the family, and I had someone come up to me and was just like, "Hey, I think I know you." And I was like, "Uh-oh." Like the mental Rolodex starts running, like, "Oh crap, what is it?" And they're like, it was this guy, Harry, and his wife Sarah, and basically just someone who came across the Dallas prospect about a year ago and was watched a bunch of the videos, and he was bringing up specific videos that I did and stuff, and I was like, "Oh damn, okay, cool."
Those are the weirdest experiences because we're not celebrities by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
But I remember, so I'm with like a couple of my business friends, right? They have no idea that I do anything like this. And I went to a Rangers game at the Suite. I think it was the last year the Rangers were at the
Globe Life Field.
Yeah. And so we're in an elevator, and the dude who's like conducting the elevator, who's like, Dallas prospect, yeah? And like, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you even know? I'm like, oh gosh, this is weird. So like, I get off the elevator, and everyone's like, what the heck is he talking about? I'm like, yeah. So you guys don't know, but I do podcasts.
Yeah. I'm kind of a big deal, as you can tell. No.
Yeah, it was a big ego, like a big ego stroker. No, pause. I guess now that's a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, because no one knew what I was doing, so it was like when a random stranger is like, "Hey, man, you're keep up the good work and stuff like that." I'm like,
"Yep,
I appreciate it."
Yeah, it's always very jarring and very flattering at the same time. And this was weird because I was sitting down, basically sitting down to eat, and I was with my wife and child and everything, and so I was just like, "Oh, okay." So even she's kind of like looking at me like, "What is this? He watches your channel?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know if you know this or not, but kind of a big deal." No. But always flattering. It's only happened like literally 3 or 4 times ever for me. But every time I'm like walking up, little taller, walking around, like, that's right. Would anyone like an autograph? I've got my own pen.
It's only happened to me twice. The one time that was the elevator one. And the other time is kind of cheating because I was going to one of those live practices that is open to the public, and we're standing in line, and a dude called out my name, and like I was not in the headspace, and I wish if I can go back in time, I would have been like a lot more appreciative and a lot more engaging when the dude yelled out my name, because when he did, I kind of like looked up, and he was like, "Dallas prospect, let's go, DDP," and I just like.
Thumbs up and
like got on my phone, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" Like I just had a freaking douchebag.
You're tarnishing the brand, dude.
I know.
Tarnishing the shield.
In fact, hell, I should have been. Hey, man, appreciate you guys for watching the show. Can I cut you guys in line so I can get them on?
How big of a fan are you? In fact,
exactly. Prove your fandom.
Yeah. You want a shout out on the channel?
Yeah. Let me cut hundreds of people in line.
Oh man.
Next time I'll take advantage. At that
Yep.
opportunity wherever it comes. I actually am looking whenever the Mavericks do their live practices, practiced because they only do one.
Right.
I'm definitely going to make a point to come out and watch because I'm very intrigued about the potential of what this team can do. So
yeah, it's so I've been back a little over a month and I've made 7 or 8 videos now. And I've tried to cover a bunch of different players and stuff. I even did the most recent one, the kind of general viewer comments and feedback and stuff, just to kind of pick people's brains, see what they're more interested in. And so that allowed me an avenue to talk about some different things that I hadn't already talked about, or different aspects of a player's, story and everything. But it's been, I think, overwhelmingly pretty positive. I do get the feeling there's still some people who are very apprehensive about this team. And to me, it seems like overwhelmingly that's because they're still skeptical about the front office and Nico to an extent. And I totally get, especially last offseason, the Jalen Brunson debacle. I mean, how many times was I just 100% confident that there was no way they were going to lose? And now I look back and I'm like,
that's one of our last episodes. In fact,
with us both.
Yeah. Someone actually cut out the portion of when I was emphatically, I had listed out reasons why Brunson was going to stay. And someone, after he signed with New York, so I'm guessing he's a Knicks fan, cut out my portion and just was like, put it on Twitter and just like Twitter at the time. And then was like, basically like, making fun of me and stuff like that. I was like, God damn it.
It happens. You can't avoid
That's what happens when you put your thoughts on the internet. You leave yourself
it's forever. The internet never forgets. I loved during the midst of all that, we had back-to-back episodes. I'll never forget it because the first one was like, there, like literally, like even the thumbnail is saying like, there is no way Jalen Brunson leaves. The next week we do an episode, it's like, if Jalen Brunson were to leave, it's just like, and like the news still hadn't come down, but the writing was already kind of on the wall. So we're just like, how do I eat crow, try to look somewhat humble without totally admitting defeat here? There's not really a way. That's the best you can do, is just to be like, let me play devil's advocate here. So brutal. But that seems to overwhelmingly be people's hesitation. And they look at the moves they've made this offseason, even down to the draft in some of those cases, and they still want to view it with an air of skepticism. And I don't understand it, honestly, because it feels like if you take out last offseason, especially how brutal that was, and you viewed this one in just a vacuum by itself, what would your general impression be? That this, I'm asking, but I'm also just going to preemptively input my thought here. I would say in recent memory, it is the most like focused and clear-minded Mavericks offseason I can remember, where they have a very specific plan of the type of player they want, the type of weaknesses they had, and the signings they're doing are addressing it in ways that might not be the splashiest in terms of like the caliber of player, but even like the fit makes sense. Like a guy that comes in even on a minimum deal, you're like, okay, but I see how his skill set could fit. It's a low risk, potentially high reward. So at the very least, that's how I look at it. How would you view this one in a vacuum by itself relative?
So I'm very much the same way. I'm very positive on what they did this offseason.
Yes.
It actually, I'm the only move that I'm negative about. Of course, I've said this multiple times on multiple people's podcasts. The only move I'm negative about is the Dwight Powell one. But other than that, the way they conducted themselves as a GM was something that I really haven't seen. Because the Mavericks, they're very simple-minded when it comes to GM. Hey, let's create cap space so we can just sign players into the room that we have, instead of like, hey, why don't we be like the Miami Heat? And it's like, or like those teams that like for some reason every free agent is they're logging in interest and they're like, where's this money even coming from? It's like, yeah, I'm gonna get the commitment and then we're gonna find a way to make the finances work out. And that's never really been the case for the Mavericks. So they've always been like, well, let's just make room and then let's just sign players. Eastside Harold.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's here. I love Eastside Harold. He's on some big Cowboys channels too. So he gets a lot of shout outs. So he definitely gets around. But anyway, that's the only attention he's gonna get. But anyway, so with the initial move of what they did in draft night, I remember being on TGK's. We did a live coverage, and I was on him, and he made me do a mock draft, and it wasn't as crazy. Well, it was the mock draft was definitely crazier because I had like 3-4 legit people that I wanted to draft at 10, and so I moved back, and the moves that I made weren't even as good as what happened in real life. And for the people here, they probably look at or they probably listen to the Mavs Outsiders. They do in the offseason, they do role play GM for the Mavs. The move they made in their hypothetical, they got 30 representatives or fans or supporters of every team, and they were trying to conduct moves to rebuild the Mavericks. They didn't even do as good of a job with their hypotheticals as Nico did in real life. So it was definitely the first time we've actually seen a GM do GM moves, moving back 2 spots, getting rid of a really bad contract to a team that really can't take them, even though they're probably not going to play, and then still get the guy that you want.
You're talking about Bertans?
Moving Bertans, moving to OKC.
Yeah,
still getting the guy that you've always wanted, because if we were to remain at 10, that was the guy that we're still going to draft, Derek Lively. So you still get your player you want, and now you also get a player who you can possibly try to rehabilitate into being a somewhat of a starting center, but also getting yourself a prospect who you were very high on, and is very much the template of what is the prototypical player that fits next to Luka Doncic, right? So it started off very strong, and then all the subsequent moves later on in free agency, you started off shaky after the Kyrie signing. And then I think the move after that was Seth Curry, and you're like, okay, so something's coming. Tim is gone or whatever. He's still here.
Exum in there as well.
Yeah, but then you got the Dwight Powell one. You're like, what the F's going on? But then you got the Grant Williams. You're like, all right, boom, now this is good. And then you got all the other ones, the Derek Jones Jr., all the other ones. So the pieces make sense. And the cool thing is, we actually are beginning to have one of the best problems you can possibly have is I have way too much
talent with too much talent in available.
One position.
Yeah,
we need to do something. So we're going to have guys who are pretty good in this league that are not going to get a lot of playing time because of the moves, which has really never been the case.
Yeah,
has been the case, but 2011 our team was hella deep.
Right.
Literally had Sean Marion coming off the bench to start the season. Anyway, but it's been a long time since we had really good role players and guys coming out who were at the end of the bench who were going to be really useful players for us. So
no, 100%. And for me, what changed my perspective, I mean, yes, on one hand, if you don't have Nico Harrison as your GM, you don't re-sign Kyrie. No doubt, zero doubt whatsoever. Like you said, the past method of just just have a max salary cap or salary slot available, and it'll take dude, that never has worked. So not only do you get Kyrie to come back because you have Nico, but I think you actually do so at a very good contract that serves both sides very well. So that was already like, okay, that's good. Now, will you be able to do something in that time frame? But still, good. That's a very good first step. The draft night thing is what I was like, ooh, okay. Not just getting Lively, not just booting the Bertans contract to somebody else finally.
Mm-hmm.
But then like I was already like in favor of that, but it was the pairing it with the Sacramento trade to get Richaun Holmes and then Omax effectively. That's the part where I was like, okay, hold up, let him cook. Like, this is so much better than what I anticipated, that I'm now fully bought in, where I'm like, okay, if I set aside how bad last offseason was and look at this in a bubble and say like, okay, did he have his welcome to the NBA moment? I definitely think so. And there's no defending that.
That run probably also kind of skewed how.
Yes. Because if they got beat in the first round like people thought they would, no one would have cared Brunson left.
Yeah.
So
exactly. So yeah. So
yeah, it
was what it is. I remember seeing the notification that we traded, and the first name that came up was sorry.
you just run blank suddenly.
Holmes. Yeah, Richaun Holmes.
Yeah.
So that's all I saw. And I was like, let's go. We got Richaun Holmes. And I didn't even read the rest of the notification. we're actually back in the first round, and we're drafting a player. And so I didn't know who Omax was, because the minimum research I did, because I did hours of research the year before for us to trade the first round pick. I was like, I'm not doing
I remember that. And it was like, we posted the video. The video was up for like not even 8 hours. And then you get the trade for Christian Wood. And we were like, ooh. Like there were comments dropping on that video that were like, oh, I feel so bad for Enyi. I was like, Enyi, I had to edit the damn thing. You spent 45 minutes. I mean, like your research too, I know. But like the video's 45 minutes. I probably spent 3 hours editing that thing down. So brutal.
Yeah.
But
that's the way it goes. So everyone was talking about, hey, they might trade the picks. I was like, you know what? I'm not doing much research at all. But I did, as you know, the time goes, it was, you know, coming out that the Dallas were, you know, they're still valuing, you know, drafting a player. And I was like, you know, that's probably the right thing. Let me see who they want. And I was very much in the Taylor Hendricks camp.
Yeah.
If he was available. I came around to Derek Lively towards the end. And then I think like a day or two before the draft, I was like, all right, like if it's Derek Lively, I could rock with that. And so I was pretty happy when they drafted him. So, and then moving back and then getting rid of the contract on top of drafting him was like, bruh, what's going on?
So I'm not the first person to talk about it at all. But I'm trying to think what the video, it wasn't the Omax one. It was one of the very recent ones I did, where I talked about basically this sort of Hail Mary that the Mavericks put up. Everything, like it took so many things breaking right for them. Like obviously the successfully tanking the last 2 games last year, why they kind of were in that corner that they had to try and do that. And like, I understood at the time, like why they felt like they had to do that. But I didn't really look at like all the layers to it. Cause I mean, it was the last 2 games, right? We're kind of checked out. We're like, all right, at best you win both. OKC drops 1-2. I think Memphis, you sneak into the playoffs, get waxed immediately, and it's done. Yeah. And so I kind of dismissed it there. But it's like, if you saw how it was going to affect the draft odds, and really it was that second to last game we're really talking about, that one against the Bulls that they almost went at the buzzer. It's like, you look at the draft odds and how drastically that could have skewed. We know the Mavericks lottery history with the odds, it never plays in their favor.
Yeah.
Never plays in their favor. Even Luka, they should have had the 3rd pick. They ended up with a 5th. And so they had to give up an extra first rounder to still get their guy.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the reason why we never hear the end of the Trae Young conversation, just because that had to happen. So it's just the whole thing. And so looking at it that way, you're like, all right, well, you were able to lose those last 2 games. So you keep the 10th best odds, which means you keep your first round pick, assuming the odds fall in your favor. And for a change, they actually fell exactly where they should. Even though there was like a 22 or 25% chance of one of those teams behind you still leapfrogging you, you don't have that happen. So it's like, okay, now we're in the conversation. Now let's just see how the draft goes. And then the draft falls into place the way it does, where, like you said, they wanted Lively. They had him there at 10, but they're like, ooh, but you know what? We also like this guy, and we'd be okay with this guy even. And we can move back 2 spots and guarantee we get one of them and gain an extra first round pick. Let's roll the dice here. And then you still get Lively at 12, boot the Bertans contract, and then you get Omax in the process too. And so it's just like,
Yeah,
Damn. Okay.
it created a trade exception.
Yes.
I remember
And Holmes, of
I
course.
was on with TGK,
Yeah.
and I remember telling him, hey, because of how the new CBA works, trade exceptions now are going to be a lot more valuable than how they were in the past. Now, if we did that move probably a year before, you probably will still be rocking with the $17 million trade exception.
Yeah,
right?
and letting it expire because that's
And
what the
letting it
Mavericks do.
expire. Yeah, we've had those before, but now it's like, okay, guys are trying to shed. We knew, Sacramento was trying to shed, so they were,
Well,
so we took
even
advantage
that,
of that.
the guy they wanted went one pick ahead of them. Like, so that's how close it was. Was the guy they were going to take went to Portland the pick before them, and so they're like, damn, all right.
Well, they're trying to get.
Dallas, do you want to run back that trade basically? But on the other side of it, sure, are you going to give us Holmes? All right, sure, yeah, it's a bad contract for us at this point. We'll do it.
Yeah,
brilliant.
We took advantage of that. That was
massive. And that's why I said, like, you can have all the questions and even real issues with everything we saw from Nico as a GM prior to this year, but just that stretch there, okay, fine, set aside dumb luck because that's luck, that could have happened for anybody. Just the execution draft night was where I was like, okay, I'm listening, I'm paying attention to what you're doing now, because at the very least I see something where that's expertly navigated. You got two very good prospects who could be part of your foundation moving forward, both of which have obviously starter potential. One of them potentially could be your defensive anchor, essentially, like Tyson was for us. So, okay, I'm interested in that. Then, like you said, then it was a little bit iffy with the start of free agency, aside from re-signing Kyrie. And so then you're kind of like, okay, maybe it is still a little bit more the same. I like what they've done since then. It's not as much flash, but every pick, when you look at the type of skill set the guys have and what the Mavericks' two biggest needs are, what Nico told us going into, I think he told us at the exit interview, even, like, well, it's no secret, these are our two weaknesses. Everything that they have done fits to a T that blueprint that they laid out of, like, this is what we need. By God, that's what they're going to go get. And they're going to do so in ways that are, some of them a little splashier, some of them a little more conventional, where you're like, okay, yes, this is the kind of guy I wanted. Williams, for instance. And others are going to be ones where you're like, okay, Derek Jones Jr. for basically your mid, and that's your flyer for a 1-year deal. Okay. Yeah. I like that. He'll address a lot of that. You're talking about a guy in terms of his versatility in the 99th percentile defensively. Like, yeah, I'll take that. He's probably one of your best cutters on the team too, if not the best. So it's like, sure,
best lobster on the team for damn sure.
And for how long this team, assuming they actually do it, how long this team, and we've screamed, like, how do you have Luka Doncic on your team, but you can't run a fast break? Like, you've got the horses to run the break now.
Yeah.
So across the board, everything feels like it fits, where I at least look at it and say, like, I see what you're doing. This isn't like the previous years where I've had to kind of like convince myself of like, okay, maybe they see something, because I'm having to squint. And even then I'm like, I'm taking you at your word.
Let's see, exactly. Rolling the ball out there and just like, let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm very much agree. I'm very excited about the potential. If anything, we put ourselves in a position to where if lightning strikes, we can make really big noise. And if luck falls our way, which I think after the trade last year, after the Kyrie trade, we were just, I don't want to say gutted, but
you were.
We were not a complete team.
I thought you meant like you personally, as far as like seeing how much we gave up or something. I'm like, I was a little gutted because like I knew, like, I when we made the trade, I was like, you might get in the playoffs this year, but I worried about what it was going to do to the back end, and that's exactly what happened. Was they could score 1 million points, but they had nothing in the way of defense.
They gave up 1,000,001. So
rebounding, yes, exactly.
So it was definitely needed. We definitely needed another transactionary period. And so this essentially this offseason was very crucial.
Yeah.
And it was very, like, I don't want to say, what is it? A last chance or whatever. I forgot the saying. I left my brain. That's how my brain works. Put a camera in front of it, I forget everything.
Sure.
But it wasn't do or die, but it was like, we are on the verge of death. Like, I can see death's door if we don't execute this offseason. And we did very much so. We've gotten younger. We got way more athletic.
Right.
We got, so we've completely shifted our, our future to where, it is bright again.
It's pointing in the right direction.
There was a point where we had one of the brightest futures, but that turned very quickly. Back when Luka was a little bit younger, but now we're on track again. Now we have to execute. We have to also be. We got to make sure we're not overvaluing our assets. I like Josh Green. I wouldn't trade him, but if a opportunity comes to get a player that we absolutely need,
right,
and they're asking for Josh, like, okay.
I love the influx of young talent because we haven't had a lot of young talent that, like, obviously Luka's the untouchable. We haven't had a lot of young assets around him that other teams would actually give a damn about. So having Lively, having Omax, having still Josh at 22 years old, although I do have some questions about his elbow. Having those pieces like that is a really good thing. And you mentioned earlier with the depth, like, what, Derek Jones Jr. is still like 26?
Yeah.
Or no, he's 29. Who's 26? He's 20, who's 29 that we just got someone. This is where my ADD brain clashes. Suddenly, like, numbers collide, and I'm like, wait, you were this or you were this?
I think Dante Exum is 27.
Richaun
Holmes is 29.
Oh, yeah, Holmes. There you go. Yeah, I was like, it's one of the recent videos because I know I just talked about this the other day. Yes, Holmes is 29. So you've got Jones Jr. 26. Grant Williams is 24. You still have, we just had Josh Green at 22. Even Holmes, he's a bit of a reclamation project, but it's not like you're having to go back 4 years or something to find when he was last good. Like the thing I addressed in the last video, his role, obviously, when Sabonis goes to Sacramento, that kind of changes that, and he kind of gets pushed back a little bit. But there was some off the court stuff as well that just made it a bit of a mess as well. So I avoided talking about that in the original video, and that was mainly because I didn't want to talk about things that weren't on the court.
and it's definitely a touchy subject, and it's something that you will want to make sure, because I would push back with you on that point of if whatever he was going through off court definitely can play a role on how he performed on court, then it's something to be talked about. But it's something that you will want to make sure you have all the information and you're not shooting out the side of your ass, because you don't want to.
That's a blowout.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure you have all the information. You can come to the right conclusions and stuff like that, instead of just like willy nilly. Oh, he's doing this or whatever, and then this is what happened. So I do agree with you that I wouldn't have brought it up, unless I had all the information.
Yeah, and the thing is with that, I think while we can look at it and say his production dropped off the last 2 years, his age gives me very much reason to believe that there's still plenty left in the tank and that you can get more out of him. Something more akin to what you got 2020, 2021. And so again, that's another reason I'm
talent surrounding him.
Yes.
Because when they got rid of Halliburton, that also probably hurt him too. Because De'Aaron Fox, as good as De'Aaron Fox is, and I'm not going to come on here, spitting untruth, saying that De'Aaron Fox is not a good player. Yeah. His skill set doesn't necessarily mesh well with a Richaun Holmes. And then, of course, when you bring in a guy like Sabonis, who's been an all-star in this league, he has to take the back seat. And fit is, especially in today's age, fit has to matter a lot more than just raw skill, because we're all about puzzles now. You can get the 60th best player in the league, and that player can actually have a good impact. So you can't just be like, that's why big threes don't work anymore. Because if you're getting a super top heavy team, but everything underneath
scraps.
it is scraps. Where like Denver is like 1 to 8 is very good skilled players.
Yep.
And that's what won. And of course now they're being backed up by one of the best players in the league.
Sure.
But that's how it works now. So
yeah. I wanted to bring up MT's comment here. He says, I don't think we're contenders now and not even a lot better, but we have more opportunities to work with and at least address some issues. This is much more than last year after Jalen Brunson left. I think we are comfortably better than last year. That doesn't mean like double-digit games better. The thing is, like, a lot of Dallas's losses last year it's not like they were getting run off the floor. They were largely games where they just couldn't execute in crunch time particularly, or they couldn't hold on in the fourth quarter because they had no rim protection. They had no interior defense or rebounding or anything like that. And so it would just break them over time. And especially as the season wore on, it started to become just a total free fall. Just with what you've done in the way of interior defense and some rim protection, I think you're going to be comfortably better, because with Luka and Kyrie, you're always going to be a top 10 offense, I think. So it's the defense that dropped off. From the year before, you went from being a top 5 defense. I think they were number 5 the year they went to the West Finals. And then they dropped to 25 last year. And if you look at after the Kyrie trade, it's like they were 28th, I think. So they fell through the damn floor doing all of that. And so just with multiple players that can address that need, just by shoring that up, I think you're going to erase a lot of these ugly black eye looking losses that you were taking on late in the year. Now we got to see it actually play out. That's in theory, of course. But I do think that even though you look at, like, if you looked at this like an NBA 2K rating system and you looked at like, okay, what's the team's overall grade last year versus this year? It might not look worlds different, but like you were talking about, the fit, the things that need to be addressed. There's no question in my mind this team is better than last year. And it's more importantly the depth that's actually there now. Now they actually have assets. Even if it's something where this fit doesn't work long term, you've at least got stuff that you can leverage towards future moves. Maybe Josh's elbow does remain a concern through this year, and instead of extending him, like I know he wants to extend with Dallas, maybe instead of that happening, you instead look at the writing on the wall and say, like, okay, maybe we can still leverage him for a pick in return rather than just letting him walk in free agency, because we've already decided we're not going to re-sign him. It would take a lot of things falling into place for that to happen, but it's in the realm of possibility, and someone would probably be willing to kick the tires at that point just to acquire him. So you've got that. You've got even these backup pieces who might not get a lot of minutes. You're probably not going to have a lot of minutes for a Derrick Jones Jr., but I think the minutes he gives you can be very valuable. So if it comes down to it, as you're nearing that deadline, somebody might say, like, well, we have a greater need for him, enough so that we might still be able to, maybe he's a difference maker in a trade package for something you're trying to address, a greater pressing need you're trying to address. So that's the difference between now and previous years, is like you had next to nothing because you had Luka as untouchable and you were treating Brunson like, he's kind of like the ace up our sleeve that we're hanging on to. Like, we want him to be a cornerstone of like a significant trade, like another trade to get like a second star potentially. And that's what bit him in the ass. He was
the second star. We just didn't know.
You didn't give him the opportunity. And then once he finally proved himself, you're like, all right, we might have misplayed this. We can still get it. We can still salvage it. No. Okay. I mean, you could have. I think if you had given him the max, by the way, I don't think you should have given him the max. But if you had done that, I think he does stay. I just think it boiled down to you played with fire. You disrespected him enough times. And then his childhood team basically moved heaven and earth, including hiring his father to make it happen. And he was just like, you know what? I can at least see they want me. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it definitely is what it is.
I want to see Atlanta and New York renew that rivalry from the playoffs a couple of years ago, just because now I want to see the extra layer of now it being Brunson versus Trae Young, because they'll even be guarding each other.
No, definitely. And two, because now you have the added, oil to the fire with the whole USA basketball stuff. Where they're, it seems to be blackballing Trae Young from USA basketball and heavily promoting, Jalen Brunson. Like, you're hearing reports that Steve Kerr is like in love with Jalen Brunson. And so, that can also be a thing. I as much as we have this unofficial rivalry with New York and with Atlanta or whatever, I actually do like those teams. I like what they did. I'm New York was one of my teams that I was pulling for in the playoffs this year because the Mavericks weren't in there, but unfortunately they lost in the second round because of Jalen Brunson, because I want to see him be successful in the league.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have any beef with them. I understand that they took one of our players, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm
more upset. I'm more upset about the Kristaps thing.
Yeah.
Still being on the hook for that. I'm like, you son of a bitch. Next year we know we don't have a first round pick because of that.
We have paid off the
not yet.
No,
there's just no more running from it.
We have paid off the Kristaps to Washington trade.
Oh yeah.
Before we paid off the Kristaps to.
That's called interest, baby. That shit builds with time.
Yeah, but anyway, like I said, now we,
basketball
or running a pro sports team is all about what is the situation now, and then we got to just move on with the best assets that we got, and we made the most of it. At the end of last season, I was saying, and I was tweeting on Twitter, now known as X. I was saying the best path forward
that ever.
The best path forward is you have to tank these 2 games. You have to retain the 10th spot, and hopefully no one jumps us to where we go to 11. That's the best path forward. If we would have tried to win those games and win it, it was out of our power because OKC was winning their 2 games. We would have lost the 11th. We would have went to the 11th seed. Lost.
Yeah, OKC also had the tiebreaker, so they only had to win. I mean, they had to win the last game to put it away, but you had to win both of yours and have them drop to Memphis.
Yeah, and so, like I said, it was out of our power. The only thing we had power is putting ourselves in the best position to have our draft pick, and so that was why I was all for. I was all for losing those last 2 games, so which they did. Yeah. Now we've completely changed our fortune because of that. I think it was like a cascading effect, starting with getting that 10th pick, trading it, getting the trade exception, getting trading for Olmax and Richaun, and then ball got rolling there.
Yeah, I'm curious to see for this upcoming year, like who the X factors are on this team. Like Jaden is very intriguing just because I think at this point he's going to be getting, maybe not, I don't know if he's your 6th man, and from an offensive standpoint, spark plug off the bench, that's a very interesting possibility for certain stretches. But I really want to see Jaden continue to get opportunities because there's so much he can bring to the table. I think coming off that bench as that scorer that I think this team just needs. They don't have enough guys that can kind of, at least in recent years, haven't had enough guys who can come in off that bench and create for themselves. And I feel like Jaden, in Summer League, his production dropped off a bit. Obviously, his shooting wasn't really there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that just was he was kind of being asked to be the facilitator a lot. And so I think that kind of was like playing a different style than you're used to, and it just impacting other areas. But on the Mavericks roster, the main roster, he's not going to be asked to do that. He's like, they're going to say like, this is what you do. You go do it.
Yeah.
So I think he's a really fascinating potential X factor there. I'm curious, is there anyone, whether it's someone in spite of him, like a different person you think will have a bigger impact, or another one that would be kind of a secondary X factor on this team, you think?
Oof. So my X factor, it's probably Josh Green. He's slated to be the starting 3. Not only is he slated to be the starting 3, he's probably our first option at our point of attack defender. We have taken care of a lot of the need of wing defenders. We have there's a chance we have taken care of our interior defense.
Yeah,
if Richaun can at least come to some semblance of what he was in 21 and 22. But one of the things we don't have enough of is guarding of smaller, point guards and stuff like that. Quote unquote point of attack.
Yeah. So Luka, Kyrie backcourt defense is still going to be a little weak there.
One of the things that makes me a lot really bullish on Josh is what they're saying about him on the Australian team. I think they're called the Boomers or whatever.
Boomers,
they're saying he is Dellavedova on steroids, essentially, in terms of defense. So that's That's good because if you remember Dellavedova, he was when Kyrie and Kevin went down against the Warriors, I think in 15.
Yeah,
could be wrong. He was weirdly enough their second best, most impactful player on that finals run. So he was doing his best, flying around trying to guard Steph. And so if they're describing Josh Green as someone that's like that Matthew Dellavedova, but on steroids, that's very impactful. Hopefully, also now they're on the subject of the boomers. Dante Exum, hopefully can also be a diamond in the rough that we discovered or that we've also reclamated. If Jason Kidd is the one piece I'm very scared about, but if he can tap into his inner Greg Popovich and rehabilitate some of these guys,
right,
then that would be freaking awesome because Exum is a prototype of a player that we need on this roster. We just don't know because he's been out the league for 2 years.
Right.
And
what we saw with him, and what we saw with him in those 2 years addressed the two probably biggest question marks he had about like A, staying healthy, and then B, could he add a comparable or respectable 3-point shot to his game? And he did both of those things. So
so how well does it translate to NBA basketball?
Yep. I agree. I think that this team, Kidd is a question mark for me. He does have a pretty decent track record of developing young talent. I think really last year we saw the question marks with Kidd where it suddenly looked really, really bad.
Yeah.
But I also think that like, okay, well, if you're going to say that, obviously he got them to a West Finals and we saw how he was coaching the defense in that Sun series, particularly where it was just like, man, that was inspired effort and everything. Like you felt like he was on the court with the kind of energy he was given on those calls and everything. And the team was absolutely responding to his energy. So it's like, okay, he can get them at least that far.
Yeah.
Does it mean he's the best option? I don't know that it means he's the best option, but he's the best option available in the sense that like, you've already got him. You don't have to like go like try and like convince someone else to leave their team or go pick someone up. You have him. And so it's like, okay, you can get that far with him. What's the next new aspect with this team? The young talent, the infusion of new young talent, whether it's the new rookies here, whether you're including Jaden from last year, whether it's the continued evolution of Josh Green, reclamation projects like Exum and stuff. That is entirely where to TGK and Perry's comments there, the X Factor Kid is the whole thing. So if he's able to do that, then yes, this team still has a really good shot at making major strides forward. I'm not saying this is going to be like, okay, back to the West Finals year. I don't think that. I do think this team is going to need time. The thing is, instead of looking at this as like year to year of like, all right, we're just trying to be a good team and then catch fire at the right time. 2 years ago, I think they caught fire at the right time.
Yeah.
Like they were a team who was a good team all year. And then something just caught fire for them when Brunson emerged in the first series. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, here we go.
Turnovers. Yep. It was like, oh, we have a second star.
Absolutely. And so now you're actually trying to build it in a more conventional way where you're like, okay, we're building a deeper, more balanced roster, and we're trying to bring along young talent that'll help us ascend. But the thing with young talent is it takes time. It's probably going to take, I don't think it's going to be a huge step forward this year. Maybe it's playoffs and a second round appearance or something. Not saying that's the cap or the ceiling. Yes. I mean, it might be, I don't know, but I think that it's going to be next year and the year after that you're really talking when those current young crop of guys are on the back end of their contract. Some of them obviously will be just coming off of like their rookie.
I take that back. That's our second floor.
That's our second floor. What do you have the first floor as?
I think, first
I feel like you're cheating having multiple floors. It defeats the purpose.
No, hold on. So not everything coming together, but like a lot of things coming together. When I say lightning in the bottle, it's absolute ceiling. I think is good enough, the talent level, because I would say this talent level that we have is comparable to what we had that team that went to the Western Conference Finals. I think we're deeper.
I think deeper, but I also think more raw.
I mean, you have Luka, who's better. You have, although Jalen made a lot of strides, he's still not as good.
He's not Kyrie, right?
He's not Kyrie. You have, I would say, Josh Green now is better and fits more than Reggie.
Oh, okay.
Who played 40 minutes a game.
Ran marathons for us on defense.
Yeah. You have Grant, who
Grant's an interesting X factor for me because when people talk about like who the Mavericks' third best player is going to be, the entertaining conversation seems to be Josh. I don't know that Josh steps right in to be the third best player. I think he's a major X factor.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm ready to pencil him in as the third best player. And it's the confidence that makes me say that. If I'm thinking third best player, I'm thinking of a guy that's averaging 14, 15, 16, 17 points a game. Now 17, obviously very high end, but a guy that can give you that kind of consistent production. And with Josh, I see flashes, but then I see him also go through stretches where he's passive. And the defensive effort is always there. The effort and hustle is always there. But I want to see him remain confident in his own ability and stuff. So that's where like maybe I'm thinking maybe right now it's Grant. And if it's Grant Williams, then is that a solid enough third option that it's better than what you had? Because your third option, that Western Finals team would have been Dinwiddie probably.
Yeah. Because
so
he's the one who also went off for 30 points in that game 7 alongside with Luka.
Yep. And then in most of the other playoff games, he was not that great.
Yeah. You have his times where
feast or famine.
Yeah, exactly. So I think talent wise, because I will put Grant on par with Dorian Finney-Smith.
Yeah.
He might even be tracking to be better than what Dorian Finney-Smith was that year.
I got people ready to put in Omax over Finney-Smith at the All-Star break this year. And I'm like, guys.
And you know what? I don't want to put pressure on him, but he has the making. Now, what I'll say
he
about...
has the making, but I'm like,
what I'll say about Omax is I hope you know how we came in and we're like, we did research on him. A lot of people did research and he's like, he can be a D&3 type guy. I get it. We want D&3 type people, but let's at least try to develop him to be more than that first.
Sure.
Yeah. Because
I see some people also saying that they see like Sean Marion.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, man, if you're gonna give this team a matrix, then yes, I'm all for it.
Exactly, right? Or hey, why don't you try developing a mid-range shot so it can be more Kawhi Leonard type.
You know what I mean? Shooting like this first.
Yeah. No, exactly. No.
You snap your pinky off a 45-degree angle. Hey man, the Mavs marketing team has shooting videos for him.
Yeah. How bad do you want it?
You want to make it in this league?
That's what it takes to be successful.
That's what it takes to be the champion, Sean Marion. Ridiculous.
I put a ring on this finger.
I put a ring on this finger and a splint on this finger.
Anyway, yeah. So I think So it goes along. And another thing, one more thing, what this team has that the 22 team did not have is the complementary guys did more than just shoot.
Yeah.
A lot of the times it was, if you don't have the shot, give it back to Luka, give it back to Jalen or whatever.
That's why I saw my secondary creators.
Yeah. So now we have more creation with our offense. Now they're not the top tier guys. They're not Kevin Durant's, or they're not DeMar DeRozan's or anything like that. However, they are still capable of closing out going past closeouts and stuff, attacking closeouts. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Where it frees up stuff. I got really excited watching Luka. I don't know if he did this against Japan, but he had a catch and shoot 3. And if that's something that Luka can develop, because for some reason it's completely fallen out of his game, because he's not had to do that since he came in the NBA. if he can develop that, then it's going to be beautiful, because now he has a guy that can create off him or create like Kyrie, and the other guys can also create. So the defense will have to shift, and sometimes they'll have to let Luka go, and so now he's gonna have more of an opportunity for the defense to, for him to have more scoring options. It was brutal watching someone like Reggie or Dorian or Kleba try to dribble past the 3-point line. It was just like, oh my gosh, dude! Like how you a pro player, you don't know how to dribble. I don't understand how that can happen. So we did need to get Luka some relief far beyond just someone else who can create. We need other people who can create off the already damage that Luka has created by doing what he does. So you don't need to drive in on a completely set defense, but now that the defense is off tilt, what can you do?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Let me ask you this, because this is a question or a comment even that I still continue to see regarding the Mavericks center position. Does this team need to make a trade, whether it be for Clint Capella or DeAndre Ayton, in order to be more than average or a hair above average? Because that is still a very seems common opinion in the comments that I see.
To assure, in my opinion, to assure that you have a successful offseason. Well, so you already have a successful. Sorry, you're at an A offseason in my book. It can turn into an A+ if we successfully rehabilitate Richaun Holmes. I'm completely out on Dwight, so that's fine.
I agree with.
Or if Lively has a,
he's better than we thought initially.
Yeah, who's that center from last year?
Hits the ground ready to go.
Yeah,
I'm blanking on his name. I know who you're talking about, but I'm blanking on the name.
Walker, Texas Ranger. What's his name? Someone in the chat. Walker. Something Walker. I don't know.
Jared Padalecki. That was the Walker, Texas Ranger.
Anyway, Walker, because he's weird. He has like 2 last names or something. God dang it. Anyway. But yeah, he was a center. Huh?
No, I said yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he was a center that I wasn't completely high on, but he came in. He had a lot of impact for the defense, the defensive side of the Utah Jazz. So if Lively can do that, and his measurements, Walker Kessler, there you go, Walker Kessler,
Texas Ranger, there you go.
Yeah, Walker Kessler, his measurements are very similar to Derek Lively. So if Derek Lively can come in and figure stuff out and have the type of impact that Walker Kessler has, then we're at an A+ offseason. Or third option, we trade for a bona fide starting center, whether it is Capella, if the trade for DeAndre Ayton is still on the table. That was a move that the Mavericks. Now I understand there's probably some pushback because everyone is looking. I was initially down on the trade, but you have to look at it holistically when you're looking at a guy like DeAndre Ayton, especially with centers in general. The centers, a lot of the times they go into the game because they were big, or they were forced into the game, not necessarily because they love the game, because they're just tall, right? And that skill set can be very lucrative, very marketable.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to look at it like a job, right? You're not going to give your best effort at a job that you don't like. We've all been there. However, even when he's not trying, when he's not giving his best effort, he's still putting up 18 and 10.
Yeah.
So, which is our starting center. What was he? 5 and 3, something like that. It was not good at all. So if we can trade for him
and a bag of waffle fries,
I'll take that. At least get me some waffle fries.
Hey man, I was like, don't shit on waffle fries, man. Waffle fries are good.
Anyway, like maybe that's why he still has a starting job or a job in Dallas.
He's got the hookup.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, if he comes in here knowing that he already has a good relationship with Luka, they have the same agent. They're pretty good pals. You saw the video of them two on draft day getting along, hitting it off, right? And then he's on a team that he feels where he's valued. He's probably going to give a lot more effort. And
he was probably the most miserable man to get that new deal last summer, because he was like, yes, I'm out. What was he going? Indiana?
Yeah.
And then Phoenix matches, and he was just like,
you're like, it's like the most miserable 100-something million I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like even the press conference, he was just like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. He's like, yo, like we've all been there. We've all been in a job that
I've not been there with 100 million, but
no, I haven't. Exactly.
This show isn't that profitable.
But I mean, it's even to a point where the Suns signed Bull, and they put him in an image with the big three, and it was like the big four with Kevin Durant, Booker, Beal, and Bull. Okay, like you do realize DeAndre Ayton's still there, so he probably just doesn't.
Another slap in the face.
Yeah, exactly. And these players, they have big egos, they're fragile.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm not against it. If you can massage his ego and stuff like that, and and I've always said this about Luka too. One of the things he needs to learn is the psychology of the game.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
tread carefully, sir.
I know this is a thing that sits off
our international fan base.
But no. Like,
we must be careful.
This is a matter of perspective, people.
Okay.
We're not saying that Luka is not good or he's not complete. For a guy that is as good as Luka is probably the top 3 players in the league, but still has things that he needs to work on, is a very promising thing to say. He is not a complete player yet. He still has ways to get better, which is exciting if you have the right mindset. So if he wants to masters the psychology of the game, getting guys engaged. So on offense, he might not need to shoot every shot, even though we'll be more successful offensively if he did. But if he looked at the big picture, I need guys to be engaged at all times, both offensively and especially defensively. So I need to feed them the ball on offense so they will feel more involved and engaged and be more effective on the defensive end. So if he does that with Lively or with Richaun, and then that could work wonders for us.
Sure.
Yeah.
On the point of Ayton about like if he fit here and you could kind of massage the ego and everything. Yeah. The reason I think that it would work here is because here, unlike really anywhere else, he's not the former number 1 overall pick.
That's true.
Like he is, but like this is the only place that should have been the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
The only place where they're not going to put that burden or weight on his shoulders. It's like, no, man, you're coming in here. You're the 3rd guy. We're not going to ask you to be more than the 3rd guy. You give us 18, 10, we're ecstatic.
Yeah. And you're good. You're going to be valued for putting 18 and 10.
Yes.
You're not going to be like, who's this guy that shouldn't. This was supposed to be one of our franchise players, and here he is, like being knocked down every year, being knocked down the totem pole. Where we come in and say, hey man, if you literally did what you did, but probably did a little bit better on the defensive end, you will like be showered with praise. There will not be a corner of Dallas that you could walk to where you wouldn't be taken care of. You know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, I want to see.
We got time for about 3 questions, then I got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Do we even have questions running in the chat right now? There's been a lot of back and forth.
Someone said, haven't. All right. I'm not sure if they're saying. Okay. So MT said, haven't you said the offseason would be a failure if Dwight would still be your starting, or was it someone else? I've heard a lot of people say that. I disagree because we did so good.
If it was you, DDP is a liar, and I will never be in a live stream again. First of all, sir, I don't recall ever making that statement.
No, but a lot of people have. So.
Not that I have not felt such a sentiment, but I also
I wouldn't think the whole offseason is a failure. However, I'll be very disappointed to see Dwight Powell be starting.
Yeah, look, he might be talking about. I keep making the joke of death taxes and Dwight Powell starting as your center for the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah,
these are the unavoidable facts of life. I don't say that with a smile, sir. I say that because for opening night, that might still be the reality that we're stuck with. And I hate it. I hate it here. But I also know that like there is actually like positive outlook on the horizon for getting away from that. He's not going to have the same role in minutes and exposure he had before. I'm not a Dwight Powell. Like culture wise, sure, fine. Okay. I'm not here advocating for Dwight Powell. So do not put that image on me.
You did say something, and I think one of your videos, you said there is essentially light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the Dwight Powell experiment coming to an end.
Yeah.
And that's a very good point. Look, for me, it's a lot more nuanced than just Dwight Powell starting. Look, if Dwight Powell starts but doesn't come in for the rest of the half or heavily get in the way of the development of Derek Lively or us giving a chance.
If Lively's playing like 6 minutes and Powell's getting 26 minutes, I'm livid.
Yeah, and then
I am lively at the end of the
we're not seeing what Richaun Holmes can give us in a game setting.
Yeah,
because we're so Dwight Powell's been with us. We trust him. We knows what he.
That would be a Rick Carlisle type move too.
Yeah, that will piss me off, right? Or things like I get it, with the Christian Wood not fitting in.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Christian Wood's not good at defense. Guess what? Dwight Powell was not good at defense too.
Mm-hmm.
He was not good at defense. Christian Wood lucked into more defensive stops just by and getting blocked just by sheer luck than Dwight Powell trying his ass off, being in the right spot and it not making a difference.
Yeah.
Right. But at least Christian Wood could provide something offensively, which Dwight Powell could not. That's why I was a huge advocate for Christian Wood being in the closing lineup while Dwight Powell was still in the closing lineup. And I did not want that. You can start Dwight Powell for all I care. If he's in the closing lineup, I'll be not happy. Or if he's getting in the way of Lively's minutes, I'm not happy. Right? Honestly, I'm not happy with the fact that he's on the team, but I don't want to be that hyperbolic. But I mean, it is what it is. Like you have a guy who literally has not. The
future is already there. It's just a matter of you have to bring him along, and in the interim, you might still be stuck with the present.
Like we've heard players say, they said this about Dallas is they don't have a presence inside.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this in the past, Derek, where what does offenses come to now? 3 points and layups, right? Mm-hmm. One of the major parts of people's offensive game plan is not even being, there's little to no effort of it being taken away when you have a guy like Dwight Powell. Guys are driving in and there's no hesitation. As much as we crap on Rudy Gobert, if you're going in, you're looking for Rudy Gobert where he might be.
Yep.
We've seen that before. We saw DeLon Wright try to take Rudy Gobert off the dribble and him get his crap blocked off the backboard.
Yep.
Because not everyone's just going to do it. We at least want people to respect the fact that we have guys who are capable of protecting the rim back there. Once they
talk about dark days, having to think back to and put a positive spin on was trying to get excited for DeLon Wright.
Exactly. Right. But now guys are driving in and Dwight Powell's back there like they're not even hesitating. Like they know Dwight Powell's not even going to go up to try to block him. He's just going to put his hands straight up, be completely fundamental with it. But and it's annoying, honestly. We have a logjam at center.
Yeah,
they're not going to try to trade him. If we're trying to bring another starting center, are you telling me we're gonna get rid of JaVale, but we're still gonna be rocking with 4 centers in our roster? Like, what are we doing here? Right. So it's just by him being on the team. There's like, what moves can we make? Because you're talking about having 4 centers in our roster. Even if we get rid of JaVale McGee we're still having 3. And then we're not excited. We're technically not excited about 2 of them, which people are not excited about Richaun. People are not excited about Dwight, but Dwight is going to have to be the one to start.
Yeah. Let's see.
And I do agree with you. Derek Jones will also work really well with Luka.
Yes, and he needs
a lot of players work really well with Luka. Christian
Yeah.
Wood worked really well with Luka.
Yes, agreed.
On the defensive end, it just didn't.
Right. And with the Derek Jones Jr. thing too, he did play 10% of his minutes last year at center, small ball center, with Chicago. So you could have, depending on the lineup, last year was Dallas kind of trying to go to a more traditional thing, whereas they were a little more new age with their Western Conference Finals run. Last year was like, all right, let's go more traditional here. Let's get, obviously the JaVale McGee one was the big one where it's like, oh, so you want to have like a more classical sort of big man down there and things like that. And it didn't work then. With Jones, it's kind of more a step back in the other direction where it's like he doesn't have outside game. He's a subpar 3-point shooter, but
he's getting better at it.
He is getting better. His percentages have climbed the last couple of years, but
is he going to get more open looks that he's ever had before in his life?
Sure, yeah. There's the potential that he's reasonably good.
That my friend.
But for me, it's the biggest thing is the defense, the versatility, the moving without the ball, particularly cutting to the basket. He has a great feel for all of that, and so all of those things address that. And again, because of that versatility, it's not just that he can cover pretty much whoever you want to throw him at on one side of the floor, but he can also play not a lot of center, but he can give you minutes there as well that allow you to deploy a more versatile, unique lineup. Yep. That's what I'm excited about. So that's how I think you can in part solve the immediacy of the Dwight Powell conundrum, is just having these kind of things. You're talking about 4 centers in a way. You've got capability to have an extra body in there. And so that's what I'm looking for here. I'm optimistic of what even like a Derek Jones Jr. brings, even if it's not going to be heavy minutes, because I see role-wise how he could benefit this team in a way that makes them more dynamic than last year for sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's about it on time for what we got here. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I don't have an ironclad thing on when we'll be running this back again, but we can certainly try this on a somewhat regular basis here, weekly something. But we'll be back soon. I'll have another video drop in this next week that I'm working on and researching at the moment. So, Enyi, do you have any guest appearances coming up on other things you want to plug, or any other projects?
Not that I know of. There's some other guys that we work with that, well, not work with, but who are part of our friendship group that I would like everyone to listen to. TGK's put up videos. You have We Talk Mavs. If you haven't subscribed to them already, they literally talk Tuesday nights, Saturday mornings, hour to 2 hours long, just talking basketball or talking Mavs basketball. So subscribe to them. Of course, subscribe to Dallas Prospect if you haven't already. Mavs Outsiders. Like, these are guys who are giving, in my opinion, these are guys that are giving real sort of Mavericks takes instead of like, the guys who are probably really close with the team and they all have the same opinion. Like, we all have differing opinions and we all have our discussions and stuff like that make it a lot more authentic Mavs talk versus guys who are like, they just all say the same thing, and shit on players that they probably shouldn't be shitting on.
I like how earlier you caught and censored yourself on shit, and so you doubled back and said it twice in the span of 4 seconds.
Yeah. Speaking of We Talk Mavs, Rel's in the building. Shout out to Rel and King. Like I said, subscribe to their channel, guys. Like, I'm not sure about Derek. There.
No, I already passed the torch to them. Not that they needed it. They already ascended and supplanted, but I threw my support there.
Exactly. So, I think they're talking about doing a roundtable here probably before the season starts. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm always down. But yeah, definitely subscribe to those channels that are listed below. We Talk Mavs, Mavs Outsiders. I think you can get them on like Spotify and stuff like that. That's when I usually listen to them. And then TGK TV. Awesome guys, big Mavs fans. And if you want to hear Mavs talk, that's where I'll go to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
But that'll do it for our time here. Thank you again, everybody who tuned in. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to those channels as well as the Dallas Prospect. And until next time, remember, Enyi, do you remember? Do you remember? Do you?
Every legend was once a prospect.
There it is. Peace.